Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, families, wherever you are joining us from. Welcome back to our Tribe Transitions webinar series. Today we'll be talking all things student accessibility services, as I know we have at least one upcoming deadline just around the corner. Some housekeeping tips before we get started. As usual, this session will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel shortly after the presentation is over. We will use Q&A here in Zoom to ask as many questions as we have time for. All of our webinar recordings are posted to our website, along with all of the transcription of the Q&A and any slides. If we can get those from our presenters, we'll upload those as well. So that webinars page is a great home base for all of the webinars that we will be hosting this summer. So if you can't join live and you miss one, that recording will be up shortly. So I want to give our presenter as much time as we can today. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kara from Student Accessibility Services to walk us through information about their support.
There we go. Hi, everybody. So nice to meet you. My name is Kara Fifield. I'm the Director of Student Accessibility Services here at William & Mary. And the best way to get a hold of us is our email or phone. And so you can email us at sas at wm.edu. And then our phone number is 757-221-2512. And we are located in the Sadler Center. And before I get started, I just wanted to kind of share like where our office is and how the best way to find us once you're on campus. So we are in the Sadler Center on the first floor, and our office is right next to academic well-being and care support services. And we are under student success. And so that is where our area is, and we love to have students come by and visit us. So the first thing I'm going to do is to introduce our staff and who your students will be working with. So this is a picture of myself. So I'm the director. I've been the director here for about 2 years, and I'm really excited to share with you our team and how we can work together. So our associate director is MC Bird. She goes by MC, but her name is Mary Christine, and she is the one that works with students. We have two of our staff, both MC and Lorraine, that I will introduce that meet with staff. And so I just wanted to share that those are the staff that work with our students to do those welcome meetings. So the first point of contact is Arena Scott. She's our administrative coordinator, so she mans our SAS email and answers the phones, and so she does a really great job of being able to stay in contact. And she does the whole intake process of turning in paperwork, things like that. And Lorraine Petway is our assistant director, and she also is someone that works with students to do the welcome meetings. And she does a really good job of working with students, making sure that they get what they need. So both her and MC do the welcome meetings for students. So what do we do? So on a high level, what we do is we're here to provide accommodations for students with disabilities. If your student had an IEP, a 504, or accommodations in high school or at a previous institution, we're more than happy to work with them. And we're also happy to work with people that have new diagnoses, as I do understand that once students get to college, there's a lot of things that can happen, and there might be more opportunity to get a new diagnosis if something is going on. We also have a fully functioning testing center. So I always explain our office is two offices in one. We have our testing center and our accommodations, and I have pictures of our testing center that I will show at the end. We also offer resources and advocacy, so we work really hard with students to help them self-advocate and get what they need. We really want them to work with their professors, but we're also here to support them as well. And we will help with students that have physical and invisible disabilities. And I'll share more about that on the other slide, but we do help students with mental health disabilities, including anxiety, depression, bipolar. And we also help students with temporary disabilities. So what that means is if a student gets a concussion, an injury, or surgery, they can work with us as well. We hope none of those things happen to your student, but we also work with students with any kind of temporary disability as well. So it's not an exhaustive list, but here's a list of possible disabilities. These are our most common disabilities that we work with. So we work with students that have learning disabilities like dysgraphia, dyscalculia, ADHD, and then mental health as well, which is the PTSD, anxiety, bipolar. We also work with chronic health conditions. We have a lot of students that have migraines or POTS where they have flare-ups of their condition. And so we want to make sure that they have the flexibility that they need to succeed. We work with students on the autism spectrum disorder. We work with students that have visual impairments. We work with the deaf and hard of hearing community. And like I said on the previous slide, we work with students that have temporary accommodations, such as a surgery, concussion, broken limbs, things like that, and that recovery process. So I'm going to spend most of my time talking through our areas of accommodations. So all accommodations at the university go through our office, and we have four different types of support. The first one is academic. Under academic, there are three types of support. We have test taking support, note-taking support, and flexibility. With test-taking support, we offer more time on exams. We offer 50% or 100%. Our standard is to start with 50, but if students need more, they can come have that conversation with us. For our technology, for note-taking, we have moved away from pure note takers, and we offer a software called Glean, Glean. And essentially what it does is it audio records the lecture and students can upload their PowerPoint notes as well. It really helps students with a variety of disabilities to be able to get that audio version of what's said in class, review it later, and to take their own notes. And then we also help students with flexibility. When I talked about the chronic health conditions, we want to make sure that things aren't counted against them with their flare-ups. And we offer flexibility with attendance and deadlines. So what that means is they can ask for an extension 24 hours ahead of time and get up to 2 extra days on that assignment. And then with the flare-ups of the condition, we either do 3 absences or 6 absences, depending on the disability, and that goes beyond what the professor gives. So that is our academic accommodations. We also offer transportation on campus through our LMSS system, which is our limited mobility shuttle service, which is our golf carts on campus. So that is for students with any kind of mobility impairment, temporary or permanent, and that will help them get to class and the dining halls. One thing I always want to note about this is it's available from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., so only during office hours. We also spend a lot of time partnering with housing. We partner with Residence Life on this. So kind of how I always share it is we approve the accommodations and then Residence Life does the placement. So we do partner really well with them. Some examples of that can be a single room, location request, air conditioning, things like that. So if there's some sort of housing need, please reach out to us. The deadline is the 30th, which is coming up. So we do want to get you on our system as soon as possible. And then we also partner with dining, with which this is a new service we've been providing, and that's for students with severe allergies, or if a student needs to have, if a student is having some sort of like flare up and they're not able to get to the dining center, we can help work with them too. So basically, with that is we do full meal plan exemptions, partial meal plan exemptions, or being able to work with them on getting what you need in the dining center. So we get a lot of questions about this. So how to request accommodation. So the first step is to go to our accommodate portal and all of the students are in there. So they're able to go ahead and click accommodate portal and they will go over to accommodation and put in a new request. I always tell students like we do need documentation, but if it is a barrier or it's going to take a little bit of time, go ahead. You can still put your request in without documentation, but we do want to start there. As far as documentation goes, we want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date documentation possible. So that can be an IEP, 504, and then on our website we also have addendums as well for different kinds of accommodations, so you can figure out which one you need and have the doctor fill that out. Like I said, you don't have to have it to have a meeting with us, but in order to get approved, you do need that documentation. If you have any questions about the intake process, you're more than welcome to reach out to our staff and we can help you walk through that. And then the next thing is once those requests come in, what our office does is we reach out to your student for a welcome meeting. I'll talk about that on the next slide. So one of our biggest things is we want to have a positive experience with students. We want them to feel warm and welcome. So what a welcome meeting looks like is talking through with one of our staff members, either MC or Lorraine, on what is their disability and what accommodations will help support the student. What are the barriers that the student's experiencing? And all of our decisions are on a case-by-case basis through the interactive process. So what that means is we are going to have a conversation. We're going to look through documentation. We are going to ask questions of the student to figure out what they need. And if that doesn't work and we need to update or change anything, we are always more than welcome to have another conversation with them. We do know it's hard for students to come talk to us because they might be in different points of wanting to talk about their disability or not. And so we want that experience to be very warm and welcoming. A lot of parents will ask, can I join these meetings? And my answer is, as long as the student is okay with it, that's completely fine for us. And that would be the support person that they're bringing. So as long as your student says, yes, you can be there, then you're more than welcome to be there. So here's how parents can support their students through this process. So we really want to help students start to do self-development, self-advocacy, and being independent. And so in order to do that, we really want to talk through the student. So we want the student to be a part of to be the one that's driving their goals and driving their accommodations because it is a student-led process. If a student does not reach out to us, we cannot help them with accommodations. So what you can do is as they're finishing high school, go through their IEP, go through their 504, kind of talk about like what is going well, what isn't going well, what might they need at that next level. And the biggest thing that's a difference between high school and college is we can't modify anything. So what that means is we can't reduce the amount of pages that a student has to do, but they can get more time on that assignment. So it does have to be the same as everybody else in the class, but we can offer them more time. So we really encourage you as parents to empower your students to take the lead in working with our office. We want this to be a student-led process. Have them fill it on the portal, have them get their documentation in order, have them prep for the meeting with our team. We really want students to start to do that by themselves. So here's a view of our testing center. So like I said, our testing center is in Sadler 181 right in our office, and we have 27 cubicles, as you can see here. It's a reduced distraction environment. We try to keep it as quiet as possible. And as you can see in the back, there are also two rooms, and those are our soundproof booths. So we do have the option of either the soundproof booths or our main testing space. It does get pretty busy, especially during finals, but students can request their tests online, and they just need to do that 3 days prior to the exam. One thing I always tell students is when you get your syllabi at the beginning of the semester, just fill it out for the whole semester so you don't have to remember for each exam. And we do have professional proctors. We have a proctoring staff, and they do monitor students during that time. One last thing I wanted to share is we do have our Summer Connections program, and that's coming up soon, and we're very excited that this is our second year. And so the dates of that are July 25th. Monday, July 21st through Friday, July 25th. Our program cost is free. I'm really thankful for that. We did have some parent donors, and so we're able to offer this for free, which is super exciting. And so what it is the Summer Connection program is a week-long supportive experience for incoming students with disabilities, any kind of disability, to prepare them for their arrival on campus. So they will get to meet with our staff, and we bring in other staff as well. We have bowling nights, movie nights, and we do have student mentors, and those student mentors work directly with the students. So we're very excited about that. It is a first come, first served basis. On our website, we do have the application there, and the application does close next week. And so if you have any questions about that specifically as well, please put that in the chat, but it's something that we're very excited to offer. So we will go ahead and open the floor for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kara. I'm going to check and see if we have any questions at this time. Now is a good time to go ahead and drop any questions for Kara in the Q&A. One question that I often get, so I'll start with that one as families are thinking about their questions is, my student maybe didn't have a formalized 504 or IEP because we never maybe it was recommended, but we never went down that path. What advice do you have for those families who are thinking about transitioning their student to college, who maybe it was recommended at some point, but they didn't take action on those formalized plans? How can they best support their student in this next phase?
Great question. So one thing I always say about accommodations is they're not retroactive. So what that means is we can't go backwards. So I always encourage students, like as you're starting college, to have as much support as possible. And so that would be, if you haven't gotten diagnosed before, you're not really sure what your disability is, having a name and a label can be really helpful. And so I would really encourage them over the summer to figure out whether that's through a doctor or medical professional, what is the diagnosis. And if even if you don't know, we can still meet with you as well. So my preference is let's go ahead and schedule that welcome meeting and worry about documentation later, but I'd rather the student have more support than less.
Wonderful. One question I will answer live is May 30th the deadline for accommodation documentation to be submitted? Is it the deadline to request a meeting, or does the accommodation need to be finalized by May 30th?
Great question. And I just want to make sure that it's really clear, like this is only for housing. So if you have another accommodation request for anything else, we have the entire summer up till August 30th to get that in. So we do have a lot of time for all the other accommodations. With housing, there's a quick turnover. getting that information over to Residence Life. But what we need by the 30th is we do need all of the documentation submitted and the request in through the Accommodate portal. We can meet with students after that deadline, but we have to have the paperwork into us, plus your request in the portal. So those two things.
Wonderful. Along those same lines, something I think I hear pretty often, I'm sure you do as well, is what kind of things are people requesting accommodations for housing? I think sometimes the more obvious requests come in that academic realm, which is what families are more accustomed to for the most part, are those academic and learning environment accommodations. What are the typical things that families are maybe thinking we need a housing accommodation request, just so that everyone can kind of think through if they need to submit those requests?
Of course. So I think our biggest one is air conditioning. So it's getting better. I will say that, but there's some dorms on campus that don't have air conditioning. So if that is something that's a medical need, we want to know about that. So that's one of our main ones. The other one would be a single room, and that could be a variety of reasons. We have students that have sleep disorders, we have students that are on the spectrum, we have students with anxiety where they aren't able to have a roommate in their room. And so if there's kind of you're kind of on the fence of I'm not sure, I would rather you go ahead and meet with our team and get documentation in order because it's a lot harder to get that accommodation once the semester starts. So you basically get put on a wait list. Where now, like, there's a lot more openings for that need. So I always say, when in doubt, submit to us. So I would say single rooms are our second one. We also have a lot of bathroom accommodations. So that could be either a private bathroom, sharing it in a suite, or being close to the bathroom. So there's kind of like three different bathroom accommodations. And then we also have location requests. So if your student has some sort of mobility impairment, or it's hard for them to get across campus, we want to have them more centralized. And so we don't ever pick a dorm, so I will put that out there. But we can have you closer to our main campus if there's some sort of mobility impairment. So I would say those would be our main ones. But if there's something else that you're looking for that you want more like clarification on, I'm more than happy to answer that question too.
Okay, wonderful. I think that's a great overview. I think that's one of the areas where oftentimes when I'm having conversations with families, they're like, why would we need a housing accommodation? And so I think providing that overview is very helpful. Um, Someone has asked, when and where do you hold the welcome meetings? Are they offered in person, online, or both?
Great question. So right now, all of ours are virtual. So over the summer, all of our appointments are virtual just because we do have remote work. Our office is open every day from 8 a.m. to 5, but all of our appointments are virtual in the summer. And then as soon as August 1st hits, then we're going to switch to you can decide. So the student can decide whether that's in person or virtual.
Okay. All right. When students apply for accommodations, how are they notified that they are approved for an accommodation if they are approved? And does any further action need to be taken by the student once they receive a notification that they have been approved?
Great question. So so basically what happens is the student submits documentation, submits the request, and there will be an automatic email that goes to the student to schedule a welcome meeting. And ours is automated now, which I'm excited about. You can pick out your own meeting time. We're also calling students that don't complete that step so we don't miss anybody, but it's really nice because we have that scheduler in place. And then once you have the welcome meeting, within the next 2 days, you will get an email from it'll go to your William and Mary email. It will be from your disability specialist, so either MC or Lorraine, and it will say this is what you're approved for. And then on the bottom, it'll say how to activate their accommodations. So once you're approved, you're always approved, but every semester we need you to go in the portal and activate it, saying, yes, this is what I need. And that's for any kind of accommodation. So it is on the student to do that, but it says it right at the bottom of the letter. And one thing I will say too is if we ever deny an accommodation, it will explain why we denied it, and you're more than welcome to either appeal it with myself or to talk back with the person that you've been working with to see is there another accommodation we can put into place.
Wonderful. This is I say this once a webinar. This is my reminder to all families that your students should be checking their William and Mary email, as that is where formal notifications and communications from the university will come, and they should read those emails in depth. They should not stop reading it halfway through. They should read it in its entirety, as often those formal communications include some really important information. For example, that they need to activate those accommodations. On the same line as notifications, how are faculty notified that students have an accommodation? Is it up to the student to communicate with the faculty that they have an accommodation? And what does that typical relationship between your office and faculty look like?
Great conversation. So really what we're supposed to do is we're the buffer between students and faculty because there is a power differential there. And so we really are here to help advocate for the student, but also help the faculty to consult to how do you put this accommodation in place. So what we do is once the student has activated their accommodations, they get to decide which professors are notified. So in our accommodate portal, they can click, I want this for all my classes or just certain classes. So once that's done, our office will send it to that professor. The professor has to sign off on it. What I always tell students is, yes, everything goes through Accommodate portal, but that human touch is really important. So setting up a time during their office hours to share who they are, what their accommodations are, how it works in the class. I always remind students that they do not have to share their diagnosis, and I recommend usually not doing that, keeping that private, because in our letters it will just say this is the student's name, here's what they're approved for, but diagnoses are not shared. I also want to share too, it's never on a permanent record. It's just through our office, so it's not gonna, follow them through their time. But basically, with that faculty, you want to spend time with them so they get to know you and what your accommodations are, and basically make a plan for the semester of I'm going to take my exams in the testing center, or I'm going to take them with you. And so I think having that conversation is really important. And some students don't do that, and that's where I found that some issues have come up. So if the student can be proactive in that process, that's really important. And if they're not sure like how to ask that, they're more than welcome to meet with one of our staff on to create something to help them have those conversations.
Wonderful. If a student has an accommodation for extended testing time, are they required to take their tests in the testing center?
Great question. So they're not required. And so what I will say is it's really important to make a plan with your professors because some of them might not be able to stay after the class to proctor that exams. I would say the majority of students use our office for their proctoring, but professors are more than welcome to proctor exams as well. But really having that conversation is really important because you don't want it to be the day of and you don't know if your accommodations are going to get met. So I do encourage students like like we can if you take in the testing center then it's guaranteed you're going to get your accommodations met or with a professor like you just need to make a plan ahead of time so that way they are on the same page as you.
What is the timeline for students to hear back about the Summer Connections program if they have applied?
Great question. So what our plan is on June 3rd, because the first is a weekend. On June 3rd, we're going to send an email to all students that have been approved, and then the students that are on the wait list, they will be notified as well. If students have already submitted, we have 23 students that have done that, and we do have a wait list with one student. But I do tell families like please still apply because we might be able to open up a few more spots or things change and people make different summer plans. So go ahead and still apply anyway, but you will get something the week of June 3rd.
Well, okay, I've got a little bit of a lengthy question here.
Okay, I'm
Is
ready.
it is it possible to back out of a request of single occupancy accommodation? We think our student may benefit from single occupancy, but she is interested in having a college experience where her disability does not define her, and she thinks that a single accommodation might do that.
So I get this question a lot, so I'm not surprised. And it's a really good one. And so what I will say is I always think there's a lot of transition when you're going to college. Like there's just so much transition that if the student's even leaning towards having a single room, I would say go ahead and still do that. And what's really nice about a single room is you get to decide who comes in and out, and it's one less factor to worry about. Like you don't know what kind of roommate they're going to be, what their needs are, and so it kind of takes that factor off the table. So I usually encourage students to go through the single accommodation route. And one thing too is like you can have people come over and then once you build connections, if you want to, that next year you're more than welcome to have a friendship group and move in with some roommates. But at the same time, like you kind of have to decide like by the 30th, you should kind of decide because things fill up quickly and we can't guarantee single rooms after that deadline. So if they're leaning towards it, I would say yes. And they're not going to miss out on the college experience. Like there's always time later on to have a roommate.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say the model of orientation at William and Mary is one in which all of the halls participate in orientation together as a hall. So just because your student is in a single room doesn't mean they won't be making some really great connections in their first 4 or 5 days on campus with their hall and building those relationships. But like Kara mentioned, single rooms are really difficult and challenging to come by. So if you skip out on it now, it is highly unlikely that they'll be able to change their mind and move into a single space. So it's a little bit easier to move from a single to a different room. So if after the first semester your student calls and is like, I really think that I just want to have a roommate, they've had the trial of living alone, and it's much easier to move out of a single room into a room with a roommate than it is to move out of a room with a roommate into a single. So, important things to keep in mind as you're navigating that process. Okay. Can you expand a little bit about accommodations available for severe food allergies? It sounds like there is some extent of accommodations on food offerings at the dining halls, which we know are kind of built into the dining hall system. But are there any other accommodations for severe allergies that you all work with students on?
Absolutely. And there's definitely a spectrum of how severe they are. But I would say if you have any kind of food allergy, it's really good to notify us so we can notify dining services. They do have a text chain. So what happens is if you have a severe allergy, what they're going to do is they're going to prep your meals ahead of time and you're going to communicate when you're going to pick those up. And so you can either, get them and then leave, or you can get them and eat with your friends and everything like that. But basically, you're going to be on a first name basis with the dining team and talk through the menu and figure out, what can I what can I get out there and what needs to be prepped back here. So like I will be really clear though, it is the same food that everybody's getting, but they're just getting it first so that way it's not contaminated with other things. And also from there too, like if it gets to the point where that isn't working too, they can get off the meal plan as well. That's a conversation through our office. But any kind of severe allergy, we do need to know about that as soon as possible, just to keep it as safe as we can, and then get you in contact with the dining services.
Wonderful. Okay. Kara, from your perspective, and this may be something that is better served on our Residence Life webinar that's coming up. But so say a student is approved for an accommodation, some sort of housing accommodation. How is their room selection process different than a student without accommodations?
Great question. So one thing I want to say is they're pretty similar processes. So I always tell students like, if you get something for residence life, please fill it out. Like you got to do your housing contract. So really what we do is we're just really saying this is what they're approved for, and then they'll follow the guidelines with residence life to get that room placement. But what we do is their rooms do go in first before room selection happens. So they will get an email from the residence life team helping them select their room, and they will have an earlier time slot than other students.
Yeah. So for the specific accommodations that a student has, so say they're approved for air conditioning, is that something where they need to do research ahead of time to learn which halls are air conditioned halls, or when they go in for room selection, will they be shown these are the halls with air conditioning?
Great question. So I would say do both, but what's really nice is whatever accommodation you're approved for in this system, it will only show you options that meet that. So for some students are like, oh, I didn't get that many options. I'm like, if you have very specific accommodations, there might be only a couple options. But with AC, there's going to be a lot of choices there. But yes, it will only show you in the portal what you're approved for.
Yeah. And I think something I've been advising families is that as students are having those welcome meetings and they're learning what accommodations they're approved for, say I'm going to get, this is just an example, but I'm going to get really specific. It's a single room on the first floor in a building with air conditioning central to campus. I'm just going to throw that scenario out there. Your student should probably do a little bit of that research ahead of time to determine what hall is that. What hall offers on the floor plan a first floor, just so they can see what is that hall and what are those options. But they will only be shown those options when they are going in for their room selection process. So they won't have to make any of those choices when they're actually in the portal, the housing portal, selecting their room. The system is going to be smart enough to show them what they need to see. But if your student is just curious about what are the options that are going to be shown to me when I go in to do room selection, a little bit of that pre-work comes in handy. All right, I've got an IEP 504 question. Our student was on an IEP throughout high school. The School Disability Services Office encouraged us to switch to a 504 because they said it's generally easier for colleges to implement the language included in 504s. When we submit our students' documentation, should we submit both or just the 504?
Great question. So what I will say is it's completely up to you of what you want to do. I would always say the newest information is the best. But at the same time, like if you want to submit both, just we have context, that's completely fine. But we just need one source of documentation as a requirement. So in that case, it's your choice, but I would say submit the newest. So for that one, it would be the 504.
Wonderful. Once academic accommodations are approved, is there a specific time during the first year when students can review or adjust those accommodations with SAS? Do students need to reapply once academic accommodations are approved?
Great question. So once you're approved, you're always approved, and it really is up to the student to let us know, like if something isn't working, they need more accommodations, they need something adjusted to reach out to us, and they can schedule a meeting. We usually do meetings. We have the same scheduling system as the welcome meetings, and so really at any point in the semester they can do that. But I would say sooner is better than later, just so that way we can update the letter and get that to those professors.
Wonderful. I'm going to ask a question that families haven't asked, but I just thought of because I get it really often. And if you're on the live webinar right now, I'm guessing maybe you're planning to request accommodations or you're just curious about the support resources. But something that happens pretty frequently during the academic year is something happens, student falls and breaks a leg, or they have a concussion or something like that happens, something temporary. What happens if something happens to a student during the semester, they've never registered for accommodations, and maybe they don't need long-term support, but they need something short-term?
Great. So we do work with those students, and it is usually more of an adjustment because this is very new and it's usually a very shocking experience for them of, they might need to use our limited mobility shuttle service to get around campus and they're not used to using that, or they're on crutches now and they don't know how to navigate, or they're in a dorm that doesn't have an elevator. And so we do prioritize students with temporary accommodations because we know it might be only for a few weeks or a month. So I would say get in contact with us sooner than later, and it is an adjustment period, but we're more than happy to help to work with them, and that's concussions, surgeries, injuries, things like that.
Wonderful. I think it's one of those things that it's kind of surprising in the moment, and we're always happy to help in those moments. I get a lot of emails that are like, "This happened, and we don't know what to do." And I think it can be jarring for both the family and the student, but I think all of us are here to support them and making sure that they can stay on track in whatever way that is. I've got a specific question that we have time for. So, our student uses an injected medication that requires refrigeration. What is the accommodation process for someone that requires that sort of specific process? Is a refrigerator rental something that could be waived through an accommodation? And how are sharps disposals handled?
So I don't have the answer to the sharps disposal, but I would say health and wellness would know that one because there are our medical professionals on campus. I would have them answer that part. But with the refrigeration, we're more than happy to have a conversation and have that waive for that student if it's very specific. So like I said, with accommodations, they're very specific to that student. But if it's something that we need to adjust because of a student need, we're more than happy to help with that.
Yep. And I am just really quickly going to pull up our student health center, just so that everyone on the call is aware, does not do any email communication as it is not a private or protected form of communication. So you have to give the health center a call if you want to ask questions. But you can take a look at their website and find their contact information. They work traditional business hours, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. typically. And so you can give them a call and ask those questions about sharps disposal. Okay. Let's see here. Someone has asked a question about the foreign language requirement, which we're not going to cover on this call today. In terms of the foreign language requirement, there's some great information in the parent and family checklist regarding those. But I would save that question for our upcoming webinar about academic advising and course registration a little bit later in the summer. Okay. And then the last one is for students that may face a mental health challenge during their time on campus, what William and Mary supports may be available to them.
Great question. So we definitely partner with health and wellness, and we do want students to get as much health care as they need. And so what I would always say is sooner is better than later, but we do also have crisis as well. So students can work with the health and wellness office to have short-term therapy. So students can either do that with a person on campus, or we also have timely care. And then we also have crisis hours where students can walk in for a crisis appointment. So all of that goes through the health and wellness, and we do partner with them. They're right across from us. So I would encourage students if they think that that's something they might need to get connected with them as soon as possible.
Yep. And all of us are willing to have those conversations with students. So we always like to say if they were to come to any one of us here in the Sadler Center and let us know what's going on, we're going to get them connected with services. Most of those services will be housed in health and wellness through the counseling center, which they do offer those in-person talk therapy sessions, group therapy, workshops, wonderful resources, but there are also digital resources. So 24/7 access to a service called Timely Care where they can engage in additional talk therapy or they can talk now, like chat with someone 24/7, and that's available to all students. So there's 24/7 support available to all students, either over the phone or through that digital platform, Timely Care. So wonderful resources for students. But if they ask any one of us for help, we would be willing to help. So let's see here. Does William and Mary have a first-year class or counselor that students can work with to strengthen executive functioning skills?
I'm actually really glad that somebody asked that because it's something I wanted to talk about in my presentation, but I just thought of it now. So that is one of the biggest differences too from high school to college is in high school that counselor really is there making sure they're getting their homework done, checking in with them, working on executive functioning skills. We do not offer that with student accessibility services, so I want to make that very clear. There's not a class, there's not a person to work with. And across the hall at academic well-being, they do have student success coaches. And so that's something that they can request over there. So that is something that they would work with academic well-being on. And it's usually a grad student working with an undergrad student to really keep them accountable and help them with those skills.
Wonderful. I'm going to drop a link to success coaching in the chat. Okay. I am not seeing any other questions here. I'll give it just a moment to see if any others pop through. But I think my last question, I know you kind of covered, Kara, like what can parents do? How can they support? Thinking through like this summer period specifically, any last pieces of advice as families talk with their students and work through what kind of support they need when they come to William and Mary in the fall?
So one th this is kind of what I always tell students is like you want a circle of care and I want them to think about what did they have in high school? Who were those people that were the support system? And some of those people are still going to be the same. They're still going to have their parents, they're still going to have their family, but we want to have that same thing on campus. So for them to kind of think through who do I already have on campus? Who do I need to reach out to? What kind of support would I need that's personalized to me? Like someone might need to work with us and academic well-being, or they might need to work with us and the counseling center. So what supports does your student need? And figuring out like yes, it's hard to have that conversation, but I'm going to go in. Here's my accountability. And these people are the people I can count on. And I think also knowing too, there's a lot of pressure for students to make their lifelong friends that first week of school. And I always tell them, like, you don't know who you're going to meet along the way. There's a lot of opportunities at William and Mary, and you just have to put yourself out there. And so for our office as well, like, we're more than happy to help them kind of figure out like where their group is or who the people they want to reach out to. But thinking through like who can support them holistically is really important as they come to college.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think, um, for many students, I think they see coming to college as a new chapter, a fresh start. Some would say, we even heard this, really kind of in that question about student wants to have the college experience and not be in a single accommodation, even though that may be what they actually need. So something I like to offer families is, while students may be itching for a fresh start and to completely start over, maybe you're looking for that for them too, for a variety of reasons, is who they were in high school and who they were in college are not going to be wildly different at the beginning. And so, whatever those support resources were that they needed to thrive and be successful in high school or in those K through 12 years, they will likely need when they are at William and Mary. So if that is someone, if that's a therapist, if that is those academic support resources, whatever those things are that really helped your student holistically thrive, they will likely need those at William and Mary. So talking through what were those things that really helped me, what were those things that, helped me thrive and be successful, and just encouraging them to go ahead and be proactive in taking advantage of those resources. I think proactive use of resources is the one thing that if I could reiterate over and over and over again, I would. That you don't need to be in trouble or you don't need to be struggling to use any of these resources. Having these support systems built into place from day one is really going to set your student on a successful path. So even if they're like, I don't know if I need an accommodation, they can get that accommodation, but never use it. But having it there as a safety net is just a wonderful way to make sure they have something to fall back on. So I would keep that in mind as you're having conversations with your students. And then my one piece of advice I give to families is, I've heard lots of student stories during my 5+ years at William and Mary, and sometimes they say, I was worried about what my family would think if I registered for accommodations through student accessibility services. So keep in mind that you can do a lot to reduce the stigma of your student asking for help, and encouraging them to ask for help and having these conversations can really set them on a path for success. So keep that in mind as you're engaging in conversations and you're learning about these resources that maybe you're not sure your student will take advantage of, but have an open conversation with them. But thank you, Kara, for joining us over your lunch hour. I appreciate it. Thank you, families, for joining us. This recording will be uploaded here shortly, and I will see you all on the next one. Goodbye,
Thank
everybody.
you.